Role-playing games are a special type of game. They immerse you in a world of incredible imagination, a rich story, well-developed characters, and a unique battle system. Role-playing games like Final Fantasy will always be remembered even by gamers who disregard the genre. But what about the role-playing games that aren't remembered? Well, that's where I come in. The game we will be looking at is Lost Kingdoms, a card-based action RPG. The story revolves around a princess named Katia. The kingdom of Argwal is being invaded by the Black Fog, which is causing monsters to attack the land. Her father left to discover the source of it, and after not hearing back, the fog starts making its way into the castle. No longer being safe, she decides to take matters into her own hands. Before leaving, she is told to grab the runestone. Doing so allows her to summon creatures from cards, which is used for this game's form of combat. This is taught to you by Gerd. Throughout the course of the game, you run into Alexander, a scholar who studies red fairies and will trade you cards for them, other kings of the world of Argwal, and Helena, a princess from another land. She tells you of a person known as the Enchanter who has been terrorizing Helena's world. She was trying to gather the runestones so she could defeat the Enchanter. When trying to obtain Katia's runestones, she was defeated by her. After being told her story, you decide to carry out the rest of the mission. The final protagonist character you run into is the god of creation, one of the beings that created the runestones years before. She tells you of her brother and sends you to the other side of the divide to face him, which brings you to the final level. The only enemies you face are bosses from previous levels, like the Puppet Master and the Vampire. The final fight with Thalnos the Enchanter is a tough one. The likelihood of you winning the first time through odds are won't happen, since you won't know what to expect, it being different from pretty much every other fight in the game. After a tough fight, it turns out that his body was just playing host to the true final boss. And man, they saved the hardest part for last. Darn. Finally, after a difficult fight, you defeat and obtain the God of Destruction to use as a card in combat. After that, the Black Fog disappears and the world returns to normal. Upon completing the game, it opens up the world to explore and gives you the chance to go to 4 realms which were previously locked to obtain some of the most powerful cards in the game. Let's talk about the gameplay, which is the central highlight of the game. As said before, the runestone grants you the ability to summon monsters from cards, which is used for this game's form of combat. This is taught to you by Gerd, who intends to teach you the way of the cards. There are 5 elements of cards in the game: fire, water, earth, and wood, each one being strong and weak to one of the other elemental cards of the game, with the 5th being a neutral element that's naturally strong but doesn't have any true strengths or weaknesses. There are 4 types of cards that can be used as well. Standard attack cards that deal damage and can be used about 1 to 4 times. Summon cards. They are single-use cards that call forth a strong beast to inflict heavy damage on your enemies. Independent cards. Cards that are summoned to do something unique, ranging from monster that attacks on its own, sets off an aura that increases the strength or speed of you and your monsters, or even a monster that decoys other enemies and distracts them off of you. Last, we have support cards, which help heal the player's life, restore used cards, or do both. Thankfully, you're not just limited to just one set of a few cards to choose from. There are a total of 105 cards to choose from. So with a max of 30 cards to a deck, no limit to how many duplicates of the same card allowed, and the option to create numerous decks, you can create a solid combination to your liking. Every card requires crystals to use them in battle, based on the number of runestones you have collected. The amount of crystals range from 10 to 30, with cards requiring amounts from as little as 1 to as high as 26. However, balance plays a critical role. If your deck is filled with an improper assortment of cards, you won't have the crystals you need, and you'll end up having to cycle through the deck hoping to find something you can use. Because your crystal supply in battle is not infinite. One of the only ways to restore them in a level is by damaging enemies in combat. Thankfully, there is one other way of restoring crystals out of battle. Unlike red fairies, which only really have a single use, blue fairies help you out in a level by reviving health, granting crystals, or restoring cards. However, they randomly appear and they don't like to be caught, so sometimes when you're low on crystals, you have to chase them down. This can sometimes act as just a bother for a regular fight, but losing all your crystals in a boss fight basically means you're stuck. With such a quality battle system, it makes it a very memorable form of combat, especially with it being one of the earliest games to grace the GameCube. Graphically, the game itself looks satisfactory for an early GameCube game. The light details that often go unnoticed, like the shadow of the character that accurately moves along with you, to the dust that kicks up while you run, as well as the accuracy of the sound your feet make while running, all show the attention to detail they want to showcase. The actual areas as well offer a nice variety of environments, from forests, battlefields, water levels, volcanoes, a church, and a castle, among others. The places you go have an option as well to rotate the camera in 90-degree intervals, as well as zoom in and out a total of 3 distances. The cutscenes from the game are right at the start and the end, which both look quite nice, representing the monsters, Katya, and the castle itself with wonderful detail. Despite a game having a number of strengths, unfortunately, most come with their weaknesses too. Though the cutscenes looked quite appealing, I would have liked to have seen more, especially after seeing how many were included in games that were out much earlier, like Tales of Destiny and Final Fantasy VII. Those games are also extremely long, going well into the double digits of playtime with side quests and minigames that can distract you from the main story. This game doesn't do that. Due to a lack of content, as well as no need for level grinding, the length of the game only reaches about 6 hours, maybe double that if you intend to find everything. One thing that makes a role-playing game truly exceptional is its well-told story and deeply developed characters. Sadly, the story here is mediocre, and the characters were basically bypassed. One thing that could have used some improvement was the music. Music can be one of the best parts of any game, although it's not a requirement for a game to become a masterpiece. Take Diablo 2 for example. That game had a very somber tone, which added to the game's dismal atmosphere. And it worked beautifully. On the opposite side of that, you have games with breathtaking soundtracks, like Final Fantasy VI and Mario RPG, that are amazing, get you amped, and just add to the game's overall enjoyability. This game kind of missed the mark. The music fit well enough, but it didn't have the staying power some other soundtracks do. But it wasn't bad. Overall, I feel like it was still a very solid effort. Maybe it was just because I had it in mind, but throughout the game I saw a few Yu-Gi-Oh references, though likely it was just coincidental. Being a fan of it when I was a kid, I feel like it helped me enjoy this game all the much more. From the Red Eyes Black Dragon, the Way of the Cards reference, the area in style to the Shadow Realm, and even one more during the load screen. Look at the color of the cards. Seem familiar? In case you don't remember, here's a hint.
Yeah, it's the same.
One thing I'm glad they didn't copy was the need to scream the name and effect of every card they played. Like it's the first time you've ever seen the card. Just think about it.
I play the magic card Pot of Greed. It allows me to draw 2 cards from my deck.
I'll play this, my Pot of Greed, a magic card that allows me to draw 2 more cards from my deck. But I'm not done yet. Next I play Pot of Greed. This allows me to take 2 cards from my deck and add them to my hand.
Imagine that being done every time you use a card in this game. I think we can all be thankful that was not an inclusion. In the end, this game had some weaknesses, but it was a solid attempt for an early GameCube game and helped pave the way to a strong sequel. The second entry improved on a number of aspects that needed some work. It added voice acting,
Another successful operation for the Band of the Scorpion, thanks to you.
albeit kind of lousy, included a graphics update, and some much cooler cutscenes. The camera now rotates 360 degrees, it includes a new elemental card, and new transformation cards, which I can talk about when we touch on the sequel someday. If you want to add this game to your collection, you can hop online to find it, probably varying anywhere from around 10 to 25 bucks, depending if you want the game complete or not. Hope you enjoyed this adventure together, and look forward to our next one. Until next time, thanks for watching.